Mascaron are literally just the faces that you see as architectural ornamentation on old buildings. There's a specific like art history period. I want to say like Art Nouveau, when that was happening a lot for people were actively putting that sort of extra ornamentation and like figurative pieces onto old buildings. And you usually see them at the entryways of old buildings. And the allegedly at some point it might have been like a tradition to put those faces at the entryways of buildings to like ward off evil from entering the building. So yeah, I guess I've been putting I've been putting faces on my ceramics since I've started doing like clay. Um, and it's always kind of bothered me, honestly, that I can't stop putting faces on things, but I've been trying to just lean into it a bit more. Um, and I usually put faces on functional wear. For like up until recently, that's what I've been doing. Like you'll see the bowls in the exhibit. I've been making these little things called devil jars, and they're functional just in the sense that like they're made to hold things, you know. They're not quite like fine art pieces that you hang on the wall. But I've been making an effort to move away from things that sit on a counter to art that sits on a wall that's more of like a fine art piece. So, but still sculptural. I've just been trying to push my work towards more sculptural than functional lately. So that's when I started making, instead of like a bowl with faces all over it, just a face on a wall. Um, uh, yeah, my friend moved to Brooklyn like a couple years ago, and I had never been to Brooklyn. I've in Arkansas and Little Rock, I don't even think we have like the kinds of old buildings that he was seeing that he told me about. But he was walking around and seeing these buildings with little mascaron all decorating the outside of these older buildings, and he would snap pictures of them and be like, "This reminds me of your ceramic work." And that actually like forced me to look up what that even was, because I was like, they're not gargoyles, because gargoyles are like more prominent and they have wings and they're scary looking. These were like these peaceful looking little faces with just some like decoration kind of, you know, peeling off around them. So that's yeah, uh, that's how I sort of I had help from him to sort of frame like what I'm doing, because it feels like just an impulse to put faces on things, but now I can kind of frame it as like, um, yeah. So part of Mascaron is that they could you could see them as like little protective sculptures, you know. So I like to think of what I'm doing in that way too, kind of like an evil eye or whatever. Um, so I think like the seed of my process really, I always try to bring up Celia's story because she's the ceramics teacher at the art center who taught me about slab building, which is like basically using rolling out clay like you would cookie dough, and then using that sheet of clay to make forms, because as the clay hardens it becomes more like leather, and so you can kind of work with the material that way. And she showed me how you can have a slab built into like a little rounded form, cut a hole in the top, so you have basically, she taught me how to do the devil jars that I've been making, but how you can reach inside and like push the clay out to form like little cheekbones and
Mm-hmm.
like a chin, and then you can like indent from the other side like the eye sockets. So you can use like this flat slab of clay and kind of push it around to like start a face development, you know. Molds made that are like these little, it looks like a potato cut in half, like sitting on a
Mm-hmm.
table but smoother. And so you make a slab and you form it around that little mold, and you put a bottom on it, you cut the top off, and yeah, but then those were her molds, so I went and made my own molds, and started making my forms off of those. But yeah, they're hand built from slabs, and the faces are all individually sculpted. So,
Mhm.
um, and it's the same sort of formula of like you push the cheekbones out, the chin, you like smush a little smile in there, you put like a little chunk on for the nose and just like, finesse it all out. You put little balls of clay in the eye and eyelids and
Mhm.
um so it still takes a lot of time to do
Yeah.
each, but it's the same process for the mascaron. So like
Mhm.
the show is called Mascaron, but I'm kind of like was like retroactively applying um that term to the old ones, like to the pottery that might be more associated with like face jugs and stuff. Just because like I do like to encourage people to consider like the little faces as like entities, but the actual wall hangings, it's a very similar process in the sense that I have like a little hump mold that's made out of like bisqueware, and bisqueware is just like clay that's been fired to be hard but not fired to like its highest temperature that it can go. So it's kind of porous, and it's like terracotta in the sense that like
Mhm.
it absorbs water. So I have like a little half moon mold sitting on my table, and I put a thick like slab of clay over it, and I let the mold sort of dry out the clay a little bit, and then that's when I like start pushing the clay around. I make eye sockets, and I can from the opposite side pull out the cheekbones and everything, and then um, it's it's a lot of just back and forth of like pushing stuff in, like, oops, I pushed all the way through the clay. Now I need to like patch that. And as it hardens, as it gets more like leather or like Parmesan cheese, that's when you can really start like finessing and like getting it super smooth and everything. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I also just wanted to say also, I have a background in figure drawing. Like, that was probably like the main thing I was doing throughout my college degree was just figure drawing and printmaking. So that's, I think, why the faces are like the first thing I do. The glazing I do is sort of like really responsive to the access I have because I don't have a personal like ceramic studio at home. I have like a membership to the, what is it, the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts art
Mhm.
school.
Mhm.
I teach there too, so that's how I have access to their facilities. And yeah, the older work, we were in a different studio at the time. This was like pre-renovation over there. So those pieces were high fired or they were soda fired. And so they have big shiny glosses on them. And for the mascaron, like the faces that hang on the wall, I in early 2020 was going to Penland, the Penland School of Craft,
Mhm.
to study with Jenny Mendez, who works with low fire clay, and she introduced me to terra sigillata and all these other sort of surface treatments that you can do at lower firing temperatures. And so I came back from that. Um, Basically just wanting to work with low fire processes. And so the faces are treated, or like their surface is finished with terra sigillata, which is
Mhm.
basically like um, really, really fine, a really fine slip, uh, like glaze that's fired to high temperatures, like that's made of like a combination of materials that turns to glass, and that's why it's
Mhm.
like can be glossy at those high temperatures. But terra sigillata is just clay particles, but just like extremely fine clay particles. And so it's it doesn't turn to glass, but the cool thing is that you can buff it before you fire it to like a very like satiny finish. So it's like
Okay.
a really beautiful, like solid matte sort of treatment that you can do. Yeah. Or it's like flat, but it's not matte. You can buff it to like a satiny
Mhm.
finish, which I try to do. I'm still learning. So some pieces are shinier or like more polished than others. So it's hard to say just because like surviving the pandemic and like getting out on the other side of that has sort of been on my mind. Like honestly, like it's had a very big impact on me, like on my health. I've had to move back home. I had to leave my like day job and stuff like that. So I'm kind of going back to the drawing board. Uh, I don't, I don't, I I am very interested in not limiting myself to ceramics. That's something that has always been sort of like a, oh, not a thorn in my side, but like a double-edged sword, is that like I can't sit in one medium for too long. Like I'm always bouncing all over the place. Uh, um, but yeah, I actually like am probably going to start working on printing from home if I can. I have materials to do like woodblock prints, and I just got to a point recently like where I really miss what printmaking. So it is on my agenda to do more printmaking. I have for the ceramics, I kind of always have like 2 or 3 like bodies of work that I'm like pushing forward at any time.
Okay.
And the biggest thing though, as far as like the long-term stuff, is like I really want to get back into like a learning environment. But I don't want to go back to school. So
Yeah.
there's all of the things that I want to do involve traveling to be in like craft school environments,
Okay.
and those are shut down for now. So like and learning online isn't the same. Like I'm not even like going there mentally of like learning, advancing my art practice by like taking online classes or anything. So so yeah, I mean until like I can travel again, my sort of goals are just to keep advancing these sort of bodies of work that I have going. And one of them is like figurative sculpture, ceramics, mixed media stuff, like the dolls I do.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and then I have stuff I do for money, like smaller ceramic things that I make to sell sort of at a lower price point, pet portraits, people portraits. I'm excited about what's coming down the pipeline, but I also like feel like it's important for me to be super honest about the impact that the pandemic has had on my path as an artist. Like literally like I had like made a ton of sacrifices to get to do that Penland thing that I mentioned earlier. It was supposed to be like a 2 month long thing. Y'all know the story. And then COVID happened, so I was sent back home. So like that Penland path is like, or like the path of studying for like lengths of time uh outside of Arkansas is like what I want to be doing. So it's like a real pickle for me to not be able to travel. I taught my first pinch pot class. That's a pinching clay is another sort of thread that I'm following with my ceramics. There's a process called pure pinching that I learned from Paul S. Briggs, who is known for like pinching these really beautiful sculptural forms. Um, but it's the process of like you know how when you throw on a wheel, you're making like a vessel out of one ball of clay. There's a pure pinching process where you're doing the same thing, but you're doing it all by hand, like really slowly, and you can do really cool stuff with it. But the challenge is that you at no point add clay or subtract clay from the ball that you're working with, and you make these really beautiful sculptural pieces. So the number one thing is that I came from an artistic family. Like my mom is a photographer. My sister was a printmaking major at UALR before I was. And like so and then also you know, I had teachers and stuff encouraging me. They could tell that I mostly just remember my mom saying like your teachers just noticed that you added details that other kids your age just like weren't adding, like, you know, really detailed eyelashes or something. Like um so it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I mean, like I love that I'm doing art as a living. There came points like in high school and college where I was like, this is not a lucrative path. What am I doing? Like, this is not gonna be great. I don't come from a lot of money. So it kind of like, you know, I'd extended family members just being like, you're doing what now? Like, how's that gonna make ends meet? Um, but there was times where I just tried to redirect around something more stable, just like like a day job, but I was always really miserable. So um, just kind of like one of my friends, whenever I talk to him about me trying to quit art, he's like, you can quit art, but it's not going to quit you, you know? So I'm like, yeah, that's kind of like my experience so far. Um, so to some degree, it's kind of like I don't choose to be an artist. Like I have to be an artist because I can't really like exist comfortably in any other way. But uh, there's as far as like the path to getting there, like if someone's wanting to go in that direction and they don't know how, it's just like a matter of I don't know, like building up a support network. There's also like I have lots of issues with like in academia, people just like telling you you're not good enough, so you get discouraged like really quickly. And so like I really like to encourage people, especially like you don't have to go through school to make art for money. Like just start practicing. Like if you have time to make art, that's the first part is like figuring out how to like carve out a little bit of time to actually make it, and then just experiment. Like if people are like, ooh, I really like that, like I would buy one, just experiment with selling it. Because like in school also they do a horrible, in my experience, they did a horrible job of explaining to you about how like capitalism works, like how to operate as an artist within a capitalist society, like and how you just kind of have to suck it up and like start putting prices on pieces that are like your heart and soul. Because like that's the kind of artist I am too, is like art is like a little piece of my soul that I'm giving out there, whereas some people who maybe knit don't have such an emotional connection to their pieces, so it might be easier to put a price point on it. But yeah, I mean, just like start practicing the process of making pieces, documenting like the amount of time it takes to make them, figuring out what you're comfortable with pricing them at and everything. So like yeah, before you even think about like trying to quit your day job, like just practice selling work, because that's kind of, for me, it was like the biggest hurdle was like I really hated the idea of selling my work for money for a long time. So it may not be such an issue for other people. You first have to like accept the fact that like you're an artist to some degree. You have to start identifying as an artist, and then you have to start identifying as an artist that sells, and that's like a legitimate thing. Like a lot, I just had just such a hard time like taking myself seriously. Like that's like one of the biggest hurdles for I think young artists or people who are trying to get into this sort of thing, is like it's really easy, especially I think in our culture, we just don't really look at someone doing art and just being like, that is like that is a valuable thing that contributes to society. Like if you have like left-leaning politics in your brain, you might already sort of have that inclination. But I feel like a lot of people from like, I don't know, working class backgrounds, like my family, they just could not see the art as like a legitimate path or a career. So there's like lots of stuff that you have to work against when you're choosing this path. So in my experience.